I always judged my parents and everything they did. Most times, I blamed them for being responsible for the current financial crisis we faced in our home. Never did I take my home as being perfect, but I always admired that of my friend. Until I went over to spend a weekend with them. Their house was everything I dreamed of all my life. It was a massive mansion, one that would make you forget every worry that plagued your heart. "Your house is beautiful," I commented as I looked around while trying to feel great. Even if it reminded me of my home, that was the complete opposite of that. My family was an average one. Somehow, we had food on our table to complete the 3-square normal meal for a day. Our house was a bungalow, hidden in a rural area of the city. I always wished to live in big houses, and this made me fight a lot with my parents. "What were you doing when other people were building big mansions?" I would always ask my father, who would sigh deeply, with pain which he tried to conceal. Destinies are not the same. But we have our home, and I have my family. That is all what I'm thankful for, he would always say and smile. He had no idea of how much I hated that response, and he didn't even care. My family was loving and united. Even if we were not in the upper class of the society, we were very comfortable. But then, I always wished to be like Evelyn, my childhood friend. At an early age of 9, she already had a phone for herself. They would drop her off and pick her up with beautiful cars. Everything about her was flashy. Now that we were both grown-ups, it didn't change. She had things at her beck and call. Everything was smooth. "I always invited you to come over for a weekend. You never agreed," she said, just as she led me into the living room. My parents never allowed me to spend a night at their home, and I was currently doing this because I lied to them. I told them that the youth and church were going for a 3-day camp, and since it concerned church, they quickly agreed. "Let me take you to your room. We have many empty rooms in this house," she said and smiled softly while I parted my lips in amusement. Each corner of the wall was beautifully carved, and the designs were made with complete care. With the combination of spotless white and sky blue paint, it was looking like one of those houses from fairy tale. "You have the entire weekend to feed your eyes. Let's go," Evelyn said and started laughing. I felt slightly embarrassed, but smiled to cover up. "That is your room," she announced as we walked into a massive bedroom with a pink and white theme that made it look girlish. "This is so cool," I exclaimed and laid on the very soft bed. Just then, I heard a scream that seemed to be coming from the living room. "I will kill you today, because if I don't, you won't stop behaving like a child." I heard a woman's voice and quickly concluded that it was her mother. She smiled at me and slowly walked out, gesturing for me to remain in the room. "I told you to avoid touching the walls. Do you know how much that cost? You know you can't afford it, yet you go around touching it with that dirty hands of yours." Her voice continued. I couldn't stay back at this point. I was curious to know what the person did and who it was. I thought it was Evelyn's younger brother, until I saw gray hairs. "Wait! What?" muttered under my breath the minute I saw Evelyn's father running round the living room, and her mother chasing him with a cane. I hid behind the wall and closely observed them. She had a dead glare on her face, and I could tell that this was anything but a joke. "If I don't treat you like a child, you won't learn. Did you contribute a dime when I wanted to buy this house? No. You should be glad that I'm even accommodating your pitiful ass," she yelled out of her lungs, while the man just jumped around to avoid the impact of the whip. "Wow," I mumbled as I walked back to the room. My head was swirling, but above all, I knew that it would be a very long weekend. Later that evening, the aggression was passed to the children. It seemed like someone broke a plate because she kept ranting about how expensive the plate was. "And so what? It's just one plate," Evelyn's younger brother barked angrily, and just then I heard the sound of a resounding slap. "Are you out of your mind? Why did you slap me?" he asked his mother. At first I thought I heard wrongly, but I didn't. He really said that. "I will show you that I'm out of my mind today," she replied and started beating the hell out of him. Evelyn was just sitting there on the couch, sipping a cup of juice and chatting with someone. This mansion looked extremely beautiful, but inside was heated like a microwave. I could barely stay still for a minute because the series of shouts and screams played out intermittently. "Is this how you people are in your home?" I finally asked Evelyn when she walked into my room. "Your mother makes use of a whip on your father?" I asked, and she hissed aloud. "That's their business." Her reply was short and enough to tell me that it was the end of discussion. At this point, I was beginning to miss the peace and serenity I enjoyed in my home. In the morning of the next day, I mistakenly walked into her father's room. He was naked, and this made me to scream and turn around immediately. Just as I made to run out, he started laughing. "Why are you shying away like you don't like what you see?" he asked. "You can take a look. I won't tell anyone," he said and started walking closer to me. The speed I used to run away from that room was alarming. I locked my room door behind me and started packing my clothes. It was remaining one day before the weekend comes to an end, but I was done. How could her father try flirting with me? They were mad in that house, all of them. I met Evelyn's mother making out with a stranger in the living room, and that made me cold. In her home? I screamed in my head as my heart raced. Just then, her father came out and met them too. I told you to do your things where I won't see, he said sternly. Somehow a fight broke out between the two of them, and I was very unlucky. Just as I tried to find my way out, I heard a smashing sound, and that was when it dawned on me that a vase just landed on my innocent head. That was the end of my weekend getaway, and the end of blaming my parents for anything. When I got home that day, I told them how much I loved them and our home. Peace was very paramount in a home, not just the mansion. It was hard to get the events of that day out of my head, and the injury I had on my head, it took a long time to heal. These days, I praise my parents each time I have the chance because it's not easy to maintain a home in peace and unity.